Доброго дня, шановні пані та панове. Український кризовий медіа-центр вітає всіх наших глядачів і тих, хто долучився до нас в нашій прес-залі. І ми розпочинаємо день прес-конференцію «Євроінтеграційний порядок».
In our press room, and we are starting our Euro-Atlantic agenda on the eve of Ukraine-EU summit. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we would like to project for October 1st when the first persons, presidents will meet in Brussels, and we would like to discuss what we may expect. We heard about reconfirmation of the association agreement, about the joint negotiation, and all about Donbass, Crimea, etc., and all that against the background of the situation in Belarus, which is not that simple. That's why we believe that the Parliament of Ukraine could and should start its preparations and discussions of the policy, Euro-integration policy, and we try to engage the Speaker of Verkhovna Rada to holding special Euro-integration week and discuss anti-corruption issues, etc. And once again, we would like to prevent discussion of the anti-corruption issues in Ukraine, NABU, anti-corruption prosecutor's office, and we also suggested to discuss these issues. So today we have invited here the experts who are involved and who have been involved into the Euro integration issues, into the reforming issues for some years now. We have Ms. Olena Kravchenko, Executive Director of the Environment People Law. Then we have Mr. Mykhailo, Honchar, President of the Globalistics Center Strategy 21st. And then I have Ms. Chyzhyk, expert from the Anti-Corruption Action Center, and they were involved to some rallies, for example, now at the Kyiv County Court. Also, we have Mr. Ostap Yednak, member of the national network, and we have Mr. Mykhailo Sidorovych, also member of the network board. Also, we have written the open letter to Ukrainian authorities underlining what Ukraine has to do and to look carefully at Article 481 of the Association Agreement and to decide what positive achievements we might present at the summit. Also, Mr. Yaroslav Sidorovych, who carried out analysis of the ninth convocation of the Parliament in its work aimed at Euro integration. And I'm happy to introduce Mr. Andriy Kubilius, member of the European Parliament, ex-Prime Minister of Lithuania, and that person who initiated the Marshall Plan for Ukraine and currently continues to support Ukraine in the European Parliament. We understand how much effort this group of the Friends of Ukraine make in the European Parliament, and we are very grateful to them. Some time ago, Andriy covered more than 500 kilometers cycling in the east of Ukraine, and thus he demonstrated his support to the local self-government's reform. Very soon, we plan to present our survey how Ukrainians understand European Ukraine. What does it mean for them? Very much they associate it with good roads. That's why it was important to show the roads in Ukraine. Now I am pleased to give the floor to Mr. Kubilius, and we expect that perhaps Mr. Kubilius will express his achievements, what Ukraine might wish to present at the summit, what course it may declare, which will bring Ukraine closer to membership.
Today, we do hope that you will have meetings with our president and representative of Ukrainian government during the Ukraine-EU summit, where you could raise important issues and present your, I think, very ambitious plan, Strategy 2030, where you consider or identifies Ukraine as a key leader in Eastern Partnership Initiative. So, please.
Well, Hanna, thanks a lot. Welcome to everybody from Brussels. It's very, very nice to see friends with whom we're going around all the globe, trying to convince everybody to implement the Marshall Plan for Ukraine. And now I will try to be very briefly to say, a few words from my new experience being member of European Parliament. Really, what we can say, Eastern Partnership really is becoming a very important geopolitical area of EU policies. So Ukraine is staying as most important country, but of course, for time being, we are watching what is happening in Belarus, and events in Belarus are really showing that things can change, things can develop in Eastern Partnership regions very rapidly. So that's why our attention towards Eastern Partnership region in European Parliament really is becoming even stronger, and that's why we need to look not only into what is happening today or tomorrow, but also to have a vision of what can happen during next decade. And that is why I would urge also Ukrainian politicians and civil society to look not only into agenda of today or tomorrow, but also to look into integration agenda of the whole next decade. So summit which is coming very soon on the 1st of October, of course, will be very important to look into what is happening during those days. Of course, Ukraine made great progress during recent years, but of course there are still issues which where more of political will is needed, especially in fighting against corruption and things like that. Also, modernization of economy and attraction of foreign direct investment are top priorities. But I would also urge, especially civil society, to find a way how to look into longer term perspective. And that's why I am advocating, especially Ukraine, to have what we can call Ukrainian national strategy of Euro integration, which would look into not what is needed to be done during this year or next year, but if you look what is needed to be done from strategical point of view during next decade or even during a longer period of time. And such kind of national strategy should be broader than just the reforms agenda and reforms program, which is also very much needed and very much important. What I have in mind, really after the first year now being in European Parliament, I can make a very simple conclusion. Of course, we see what is the difference now in EU policy towards Western Balkans and to Eastern Partnership countries, even most advanced countries, what we call trio, like Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova. And the difference is very clear. Western Balkan countries have membership perspective, Ukraine still does not have. And the major question is really how to achieve, how to push EU to have more ambitious strategy towards Eastern Partnership countries and especially towards Ukraine. How to push EU to have to open the doors for future membership also for Ukraine. And that is where I see that Ukraine needs to have not only a reforms agenda, but also a very strong and effective lobbying agenda. How to convince both Brussels, Berlin, Paris, other big capitals that during the next decade, those doors for the membership would be open also for Ukraine. And that is where the ownership by Ukraine of some kind of such ambitious strategy would be crucial. Because if Ukraine will wait that this membership perspective would be brought by European Parliament to Ukraine or by Commission or other institutions of European Union, so perhaps Ukraine will wait very long time. If Ukraine will expect that such kind of development will happen because of it will come from one of the big capitals of Europe, like Berlin or Paris, again, it's not very clear when it can happen. Ukraine needs to have its own strategy how to convince Europe to open the doors. And in order to implement such a strategy, Ukraine needs to learn how to build a coalition of the friends of Ukraine. First of all, starting maybe from the neighbors like Poland and Lithuania, but then expanding such a strategy. And that's exactly will depend very much how much Ukraine by itself will feel such an ownership of such a strategy. So I would really urge, especially Hanna, your advocacy group, knowing your experience and your energy, I am absolutely sure that you can convince both Ukrainian Rada and government and president office to work on such a strategy. and we are ready to assist, and that would be really very crucial, because without some kind of such strategic attempts, we know from our own experience, politicians usually are staying with very short-term agenda. In order to have long-term agenda, national agenda, there is really a very big need to convince politicians, to convince civil society of Ukraine to work on such a strategy and to have such a strategy as one of the very important documents. So I would wish best regards to all of you. I would wish best regards to Ukraine. A summit which is coming is of course very important, but even more important is ability of Ukrainian politicians and civil society to look not only into what will happen on 1st of October, but to look into what Ukraine wants to achieve during the next decade. Thanks a lot, Hanna.
Дуже дякую, Андріус. Насправді дуже правильно.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrius. I am absolutely agree that Ukraine has to think not in terms of the October 1st, but it should look further and to the perspective, long-term perspective, and build up its strategy for 10 years ahead. And we here can take an example of the Western Balkans who think now about membership, and we should not listen carefully to our Western partners who try to abstain from any promises, but we should promote our long-term membership strategy. You might recollect when the parliament and civil society jointly made a big effort to put forward some Euro integrational targets and achieved good things. I also might remind you that our neighbors like Georgia and Moldova, we have many things and which we already received from the EU, and we can coordinate and unite our effort to lobby for our membership. I believe that after visit to Brussels and after local elections, it will be easier for us to discuss local development in the regions. And Andrius, speaking about the Marshall Plan, about London, Paris, Berlin, we might invite and collect a group of, establish a group of lobbyists who might present the importance of Ukraine's membership in perspective, Ukraine's membership in the EU. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Yaroslav Sidorovych. One thing is to look at the international summits and trying to get ready to them. On the other hand, we have to do our homework. Good morning, everybody. Andrius, thank you very much for your suggestion to develop a long-term strategy and for all your effort as a friend of Ukraine. Some 6 years ago, I was honored to participate in drafting the strategy of Ukrainian development up to 2020, and Now, when I heard about the Euro integration strategy from you, I understood that you are right. As for our analysis, actually, it was not the content analysis, it was just mathematical or statistical analysis. First results of our statistical analysis were presented on August 25. As of now, Ukraine has fulfilled 47% of the association agreement, and in different colors on our diagram, you can see what is fulfilled, what is partially fulfilled, what is not fulfilled. The tasks, which are more than 2,000 in total numbers, they are split more or less equally between different ministries and state agencies, and we should confess that the success is not that impressive that we would like to see. So observing what the parliament in the cabinet of ministers has been doing, we observe that the association agreement implementation has slowed during the last year. Only 90% of the tasks were implemented by those governmental bodies, and perhaps you can see my presentation here. The worst thing which we observed is that the Verkhovna Rada, which had to be the leader in the AA implementation, it lags behind. Because this is the role of the parliament to pass necessary laws as quickly as possible. I had analyzed the agenda of the fourth session of the parliament, which was voted for 2 weeks ago today. Reconciliation Council will take place, and they have they have 788 draft laws, bills, which are in their portfolio. I would like to remind you that during the last year, the parliament had passed only around 100 laws. If that's more than that, almost 800 bills. This is total number which is in the portfolio, more or less ready or reviewed by the committees, are 166 laws. They are now in the short list portfolio for the parliamentary scrutiny. Here you see on this slide, you see the list of committees which submitted the reviewed bills to the parliamentary room. Here on this slide, you see the list of those committees which presented no bills after scrutiny. That is, which did no work on legislative drafting, and two top committees in this list are the Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence, and the Committee on Freedom of Speech Committee. This is very much surprising because in the parliamentary portfolio there are several bills which are waiting for the parliamentary scrutiny, and the first step of the committees should be to review those most urgent draft laws. So the next a committee which remains silent. This is on the foreign policy and interparliamentary cooperation, and the Committee on Ukrainian integration of Ukraine to the EU, which also we might expect not to stay silent. Here on this slide, present that promises which the Servant of People Party promised to do during their term, and in which areas they made nothing actually. So the first promise was to deprive the owners of media from impact on the content of materials prepared by journalists of the media which belong to those oligarchs. This second promise was to deprive SBU and prosecutor's office and national police from the functions which are not pertinent to them, but nevertheless the powers are with the law enforcement agencies, and they use that improper power to intimidate businesses. The third promise was about inevitable punishment for the law enforcement officers for the abuse of power, and we saw no any special measures on that. Also, they promised to pass the laws which were necessary for Ukraine's integration for the EU to the EU and implementation of AA. The next, and nothing of that was done. The special issue is about energy sector. There was the whole list about energy legislation which were required for Ukraine's Euro integration effort, and unfortunately out of that long list which you see on your screens now, only three draft laws, 3 bills were partially passed. And even out of that list of laws, some of them are of lobbying nature and some of them are of populist nature. There is very important draft law about Ukraine's implementation of European Directive number 28 about transport is of primarily importance, but it is in almost the back positions in this list. So we have 37% of implementation and unfortunately, neither in 2019 and 2020, the minimal amount between 20 and 25% was done. The key here on this slide, you see the key sectors in the energy within the energy sector which had to be reformed. We have to pass 11 new laws, and here you see the brief description. Then there is a review of the draft laws about gas, about oil, and all these are laws about energy security. Of course, Ukraine had done much in terms of energy security. We may recollect the unbundling, the Naftogaz unbundling, the Stockholm arbitration procedure, reform of NAK Naftogaz. But we have a lot of other additional challenges, and we have to respond to these challenges. Europe is slowly go into the renewable energy and slowly implementing that strategy, while we should devote more attention to it. Also in the area of nuclear energy, about, for example, about radiation nuclear emissions protection of people, etc. I would show some slides and for you to be able to see it later. In August 22, I observed presentation about protection of the environment, and I was happy about the perspective of some improvements which might happen in result of that. I am moving forward, not to speak longer. Let us discuss what could be done to speed up our work on the implementation of association agreement. We have to pass some urgent bills, some urgent draft laws. The status of the urgent draft laws could be suggested, could be imposed even by the president. Of course, almost 800 bills which are now in the Verkhovna Rada portfolio. These are the program. This might be the program for 3 years, but they should not prevent the parliament from urgent work aimed at Ukraine's move forward towards Europe. The second then the parliamentary committees the Committee on European Integration has to review intensively the most urgent draft laws. I understand the Euro Integration Committee is not very numerous, and perhaps experts from the European Council might help the committee to work on these draft laws. Sometimes you cannot understand how this or that draft provision may work in real life, and quite often it's useful to know experience from other countries which have already implemented similar implementation. And I expect that the EU may share something useful with us, and that communication between EU and our authorities might be very useful for us.
Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to another speaker. So this is about the analysis of the work of the Verkhovna Rada, and the initiative is in the hands of the president. And the president should introduce these documents to the parliament. They should be urgent documents. Maybe they should have a meeting with the speaker and the prime minister. And there was such a reform of the National Security and Defense Council. They should say that there is agenda and priority of Euro integration issues. And I would like now to give the floor to our speaker, and he will tell us why these issues are important. And for a long time, Russia tried to influence Ukraine through energy sector and corruption in it. And they influenced this sphere greatly. And so this was an opportunity to break from Russian networks and to connect to European continental networks, and the association agreement on this has great importance to break away from the influence of aggressor state. Thank you very much, Anna. I would like to thank the previous speaker, Yaroslav, and Andriy for wonderful presentations. I would like to focus on several positions that are important in the context of the future summit between Ukraine and EU. And Anna outlined this issue, and I would like to focus on this issue. So first, national domestic security issues, and then Mr. Sidorovych mentioned about energy sector, and we have some good things in this sector. So first, the issues of national and international security. First, this is the issue of the Black Sea region. This area is one of the most vulnerable for the national security of Ukraine because of Russian occupation and illegal annexation of Crimea. So this Black Sea is also the region of the European Union, and also in this basin there are 3 countries that have the association agreements: Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. And now we have time to initiate an idea to create a format, EU plus 3 in the Black Sea region. Not only to just have this format, but to resolve important issues that are present in the Black Sea region, including security issues. We understand that security issues for EU, these issues are important, and for NATO it is important, and Ukrainian side should raise these issues about more cooperation between EU and NATO in the Black Sea region. in order to reinforce capabilities and resilience of such countries as Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia that have association agreement with the European Union and have special relations with NATO. That's about Ukraine and Georgia mainly. So the synergy of efforts between EU and NATO, this synergy is really important for our three countries. Also, we should speak about introduction of special monitoring, maybe not mission, but special monitoring at the level of the European Union to monitor the situation in the Black Sea region. Also, this concerns economic cooperation because there's a communication and trade, and we see that the Azov and the Black Sea basins, they have such a peculiarity that one of the countries, Russia, is trying to turn these seas, let's say, into Russian lake. And they want to establish their order there. They limit trade, transportation, the situation of the Azov Sea in 2018, 2019. The situation is very well described and known to everyone. In this context, it is really important that OSCE reinforced its efforts. This organization demonstrates a lack of capabilities when we are speaking about monitoring of the occupied territories, for example. That's why we need some remote monitoring from the European Union and stimulation of OSCE in order to pressure the aggressor, Russia, in order to have the mission of OSCE in the occupied territories of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. For the European Union, that would be really important in the context, because the occupied territories of the three countries, Abkhazia, occupied by Russia, separated by Russia from Georgia, Crimea, and Transnistria region. So this monitoring on the occupied territory, I believe it is really important for European Union, for NATO, in the context of response to those challenges and threats that Russia creates by its behavior. I believe that also importance is the more active actions, and there should be proper impulse from EU and from Ukraine during the summit on the 1st of October. The impulse connected with another organization of the Black Sea region, the organization of cooperation in the region of the Black Sea. This organization exists. Some people say that it is not really active, but we have such an organization, and there are changes. The general secretary of this organization will be changed, so maybe Ukraine should communicate with the European Union and with the members of this organization to support the candidature of Ukraine for the position of the general secretary of this organization. And traditionally, for many years, this position was held by the representative of Greece. Now Russia is trying to provide their candidature, and this is not acceptable a priori because Russia violated international law and international maritime law. And it transforms the Black Sea exclusively in its zone of influence. I believe that Russia should be rejected in principle in opportunity of holding this position until status quo is restored in the Black Sea, and Russia should get away from the occupied territories of the Black Sea countries. So there should be support from the European Union for Ukrainian representative for this position, and We believe this will be Mr. Bodnar, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. So also, we should deal with this issue together in order to improve our cooperation in the framework of those formats where we have opportunity to demonstrate progress and good results. Transport and energy for the Black Sea, these are important issues, and cooperation took place and will take place in the future. Now we are speaking about energy. Cooperation in the sphere of energy with the European Union and reforms carried out in the energy sector. Mr. Sidorovych mentioned this. Here we see a noticeable progress. Not all the sectors may demonstrate such a progress. We know the reasons why. If we compare gas sector, and this was Achilles' heel of Ukraine, if we compare it with the situation in Belarus, that always got gas for a lower price from Russia. And for the last half year, Belarus is asking Russia to reduce the price on gas. They get lowered price, but they want to lower it further because the price at European hubs in summer was 3 times lower than the lowered price provided by Gazprom to Belarus. So if we are speaking about the figures, for Belarus, the price is 127. And in European hubs in the summer, the price was less than $50. So acting President Lukashenko noted that Russia sells gas to Germany at a lower price than to Belarus. And in Ukraine, we do not have such problems. Starting 2015, we do not get, we didn't have Russian gas directly. We have European hubs, and we get gas in sufficient quantity and at a proper price. And we were waiting for a phenomenon, and we waited for it for a long time. Ukrainian and soil gas holding facilities, they became really attractive. And 1/3 of gas that is this is imported gas of foreign companies that want to use our storage facilities for their gas business during winter season when the price goes up. And this is what we wanted, and this became possible after signing of the association agreement. Step by step, appropriate changes were made and decisions were taken, and this process is ongoing. There are things to improve, but the progress and results are positive for Ukraine. We have positive results, and this is the synergy of actions between Ukraine and EU. Also, electrical energy sector. There are more problems than we had in the gas sector, and as Mr. Sidorovych mentioned, the problem is that we have economy that is topped by oligarchs, and they are like parasites in this economy. The problem of integration of our unified grid into European grid in 2017, 3 years ago. In June, the documents were signed, and the aim is in 10 years to have full integration. I am pessimistic about it. Taking into account that the energy system is functional, but part of our energy system is in the occupied territories. It is not comprehensive, and synchronization will be connected with serious problems. Several projects, and the most advanced of them, Energy Bridge, Khmelnytskaya nuclear station, Rzeszów, to provide the excessive energy. This project was nullified. There are some chances still. We have excess of energy, but without physical communication, we are not able to export, and the price is not competitive for this electricity in Europe. But I believe that a unique chance appears in order to have another approach to this problem, and this chance is Green Deal of the European Union. This Green Deal for Europe, I won't go into technical details, but we may take this excessive electric energy, we may transform it into hydrogen, and we may build some facilities to create hydrogen and to export it to the European Union with the use of existing capabilities of gas transportation system that we have. And we will get a double effect in energy, different sectors of energy, and it will contribute to our cooperation with Europe. Hydrogen is a word for the relations between Ukraine and the EU. When our European partners hear this word hydrogen, they ask us to explain what we mean, and Ukraine is considered as one of the countries that may produce hydrogen, and this hydrogen may be exported to EU because we are a neighboring country and we have proper infrastructure. The concept looks great, but we should take into account the risks, security risks, business risks, production risks. So we have something to work on, and Ukraine should make steps, and there will be proper response from Germany, Poland, Slovakia, and we see this interest in the context of those consultations and expert discussions that we had. Despite, let's say, limited capability of today's top officials to respond adequately to the challenges of modern state in Europe, I am a cautious optimist in the context of Ukrainian and European Union cooperation. Thank you, Mykhailo. Due to powerful analysts, civil society, and interested parties, discourse to EU and NATO, these are not declarations that the power is trying to present, because we see that 60% of Ukrainians who support the EU and NATO, this is high percentage of support by society, and no one will try to change the course, but we should not waste time. And we have the opportunity to influence. That's why we hold this event today. When you were speaking about hydrogen as a parole for EU, so you provided a vision of ahead for tens of years. There should be proper competition of those ideas that are important for the country concerning the budget and the prospects of being partners with the top nations of Europe. And we are now speaking about what Ukraine may contribute not only to security, because we have been opposing aggression for the 6th year. So we would like to give the floor to Olena Kravchenko, the executive director of NGO Environment People Law. They analyze the association agreement and they protect our national interests, and we should have good negotiation position in order to protect interests of Ukraine and what will be beneficial for Ukraine. So there was good discussion in the framework of committee hearings. New European Green Deal discussion.
Thank you. And thank you to previous speakers because they influenced my thoughts quite a bit. And first, my remark about national security. You mentioned the Sustainable Development Strategy 2020. Which we could not take seriously because there were no connection between environmental sustainability and sustainable development in that strategy. And now I would like to mention the Black Sea and the Azov Sea regions in terms of sustainable development and environment. And especially I would like to point out to the Kerch Bridge, which negatively impacts, influences the environmental situation. One of the species of Azov dolphins, they suffer very much from that bridge. We also have the Black Sea Biosphere Reserve, which is not far from the military exercise field, and we understand that the presence of the military exercise field and the proximity of it to the reserve is very bad. And when we think about the energy, about food security, about water supply, we all understand that the environmental sustainability becomes more and more vital. On the other hand, the needs of defense and national security quite often intersect with the environmental issues. For example, that huge harm which was made to the environment in the East is immeasurable, by the way. We cannot just measure that harm in the kilometers of damaged pipelines, in the tons of coal which was not produced, etc. We cannot calculate the losses for the environment because of the war in the East so easily, but I believe that sooner or later this will be brought to the international courts. I could remind you that after the Balkan Wars, a special methodology was developed how to calculate the damage to environment and how to revive that destroyed environment up to the level that people could come back. As for the green energy, looking at the boost in its development, I immediately think about chaos when we try to make a roof and walls of a building not having the foundation. And of course, reading the Green Deal, I felt very much proud that I live in the same continent where people were able to produce such an ambitious document. On the other hand, the environmental experts remember that Ukraine has the environmental strategy, and much things in that strategy they coincide with this newly approved European course. We have very good strategy on waste management. We have a lot of other good strategies which are toughly drafted and then passed, but then they are kept forgotten. Unfortunately, there is neither criminal responsibility for non-implementation of those strategies, nor any other sanctions for non-implementation. Of course, it's very important to join the Green Deal, and it is also important from the funding point of view, or co-funding, because for Ukraine it's a heavy burden to finance many its environmental initiatives. Always environmental committee and the government requests for financial budget estimates, financial estimates, where to find money. And of course, it's not so easy to find resources. That's why the Green Deal might become a good source for diplomatic, environmental, and financial support for the diplomatic and environmental steps. Yaroslav mentioned that currently we have 14 bills in the parliament, which are priority bills, but we have to pass the law on the state environmental authority. This is the most crucial institutional step forward. Civil society and NGOs could not be the main watchdogs of environmental development in the country. We need institutional reform. We need a special agency, and this change could be promoted and led only by the presidential office. The metallurgy sector are not happy with the waste management strategy, with the environmental inspection provisions, and the metallurgy sector keeps blackmailing the government that they would not be able to function in after implementation of that environmental measures. The EU delegation in Ukraine is familiar with this issue, and they are ready to support us, but how to explain to businesses that those environmental laws about emissions from combustion combustion installations and others, that they are important. The law, which is now the draft law, which is now in the parliament, and where deadline is October 1st, is unrealistic, and the most important aspect in it is industrial emissions. We have to introduce the law, to introduce and pass the law about industrial pollutions. Those pieces of legislation have to be passed to extrapolate and to adopt in Ukraine European directives. Of course, those draft laws would not become possible without the state monitoring system. The state monitoring is in the environmental areas. This is something which we try not to discuss, which we try to escape, but without monitoring system, we are unable to draft any strategy, because we do not know the situation in Ukraine. What is current situation in Ukraine? Why those draft laws about control and monitoring, about permissions for pollutions, why they are important? We have to preserve our planet. We have to preserve our environment. In the Green Deal, we have a big section about preservation of biodiversity. So by October 1st, we have to pass the draft law about protection of the emerald networks. We need to preserve these green areas for ourselves and our children. Thank you, Olena. Having heard about this environmental agenda, I understood that we need not just one Euro-integrational week, but we need more than 3 Euro-integration weeks in the parliament. I believe that the Ministry of Environment, which was joined to the Ministry of Energy, was almost ruined, while your presentation emphasizes the need of it. I am pleased to introduce Galina Chyzhyk. She represents the Corruption Counteraction Center, who will speak about anti-corruption issues. Halyna, what are our top priorities in the anti-corruption area before the summit? What can we do to prevent a situation when once again our European partners would point out to our setbacks in the reforms and to be able to present our 10-year perspective of reforms? Thank you, Anna. I would like to speak in a more optimistic style, but it looks like this autumn will witness attacks on the anti-corruption bodies, and the main task will be to prevent anti-corruption network, including the Anti-Corruption Bureau, Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, and Anti-Corruption Court from extermination by pro-Russian forces in the country. Why it is so important to preserve the independent NABU, because this is direct precondition of a visa-free regime in the EU for Ukraine. And here the question is whether we will manage to preserve visa-free regime. We can lose everything and find ourselves back in 2012. These days, Anti-Corruption Court has made a scandalous ruling. The Constitutional Court, for the first time, made a review of the staff case. This was not about the piece of legislation. This was about staff decision of the former president. Actually, it looks like it is an attempt to bring new people to NABU instead of those who are inconvenient for the parliament. And this is against the background of several successful anti-corruption cases. Also, now there is a selection of members to the commission that would select the candidates to NABU director. The selection procedure, according to legislation, should be depoliticized and transparent, while we observe that MPs suggest candidates who are not politically neutral on the one hand and who are not professionals in the area on the other hand. What we expect to see this autumn in the Constitutional Court, this will be 5 cases against anti-corruption bodies. They will undermine the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, electronic declarations, criminal responsibility for Rhone declaration. Those cases were filed by opposition, pro-Russian political force supported by Kolomoisky and the Medvedchuk forces. The interest of Kolomoisky here is to bring back his private bank or to soak out more money from the national budget of Ukraine. Kolomoisky is very much interested to bring an end to Ukraine's cooperation with the IMF and other Western institutions, and it's quite clear. But decisions made by the Constitutional Court during last month raise fears that this court might take decisions which would undermine our relations with the Western partners. Also, formation of the judiciary system is the issue. Quite recently, the parliament voted for accepting support from the EU, but precondition for that is higher qualification committee of judges and the higher judges board, and the parliament has to pass laws opening the way to positions in that bodies for the most qualified lawyers. Now the president has submitted to the parliament the law which would allow to select the worst people to, and this will be done by notorious judge of the Kiev County Court, Mr. Vovka, who was charged by NABU with corruption cases, and thus, we endanger and jeopardize our cooperation with the International Monetary Fund. Till now, we failed to pass necessary legislation. What we understand now, the key threat, the president can become a key threat to the judiciary system. That is, summing up, there is a big threat that we may lose all the achievements of the last 5 years and get no further financial support. There is a real threat to the anti-corruption system in this country, and this autumn would show whether we will manage to preserve visa-free regime. Pro-European MPs should get united in the parliament and stand for the preservation of the anti-corruption bodies in this country. They have to vote for the necessary laws about judiciary and about anti-corruption bodies. Thank you, Galina. I understood your key message that we have to unite MPs from different factions, but those who stand for Ukraine. Now I would like to give the floor to Andriy Skipalsky. Till recent past, he worked for the Ministry of Health and will develop more about a special section devoted to the public health in the association agreement.
A year ago, the Verkhovna Rada ratified the agreement on association, and we have active work of the bodies of power over this association agreement. And we are dealing with reform of public health, Article 22. This is a new important definition of healthcare, and all the system is working for a person, for a patient, to preserve health. For me, this is an important article, and it consists of several obligations. Number one, the reform of primary level of healthcare. The situation is not bad with this. Also, obligation about non-infectious diseases, non-contagious diseases, alcohol, tobacco, and framework, convention, contagious diseases, infection diseases. In 2014, we already knew that we should increase our capabilities to counteract infectious diseases. There are many obligations on this there, and also healthcare in all other articles in the framework of the association agreement. About primary care, reform was implemented, package of services is provided. There are some problems, but we won't go into detail. I was asked to provide some recommendations, what should be done, and what draft laws are the most important on the agenda. Public health usually is not prioritized properly. And different lobby groups influence on the sector that prevent development in this area. Political will is needed, and there should be not only words but also actions in Euro integration, because many strategies were written, but if the laws are not adopted, this is unprecedented. Public health is 30% of implementation, the lowest rate concerning the implementation of the association, what we should do and what is lacking. So some documents were adopted that will help us to assess the area. These are directives. The tobacco directive is on the agenda for 5 years without any results. Draft law 2813, it is on the agenda, and Europeans maybe do not believe that we will be able to adopt, because this draft law usually fails. So the committee should submit it to the first reading without further delay. Draft law 2813. Safety of blood. No one dealt with this issue. European standards cannot be implemented. The draft law is being prepared for the second reading. 3648 is the number of this draft law. This will provide political dividends and help to the patients to provide better conditions and introduction of security safety concerning blood. Public health draft law should be properly developed and passed through the parliament. We do not know who is responsible for what concerning COVID issues and what are the functions, what are responsibilities. Local bodies of power do not know their responsibilities properly concerning public health, about bioprotection, issues. So the law on public health should be submitted and passed. The last one, there are a lot of tasks for the government, provision on sanitary rules. This is really important because this is pandemic, but the legislation is not relevant, it is obsolete. Thank you. So this was about the main priorities. So time is up. We had the aim to provide the issues of Euro integration, to discuss these issues before the summit. When we analyze issues concerning environment, we see that there are 2,000 amendments to the draft law on environment, and it was not introduced to the whole, but we should take care of environment and to provide security in the sector, and also to present the results concerning implementation of the association agreement. Environmental control law is not ready for submission to the Verkhovna Rada. There is a lot of work ahead, and we hope that during Ukraine-EU summit there will be some declarative documents that should be signed about green course, and the issues of environmental safety and control will be discussed. We should be the drivers of the European integration. Unfortunately, we do not see in the parliament, in the government, we do not see proper support, the proper implementation of the agenda the European Parliament deputy mentioned about this. So Ukrainian society should be the driver. We will protect those changes, those results that Ukraine reached during these years, and we hope that we will be able to move forward. Thank you very much, and we will meet during the next events. Using the opportunity that we are heard by the European parliamentarians, I would like to thank the deputies of the European Parliament for two things mainly. First, that the European Parliament always supported the rejection of the Nord Stream 2, and we hope that this position will remain. And the second, about the firm position of the European Parliament in support of resolutions concerning political prisoners, concerning Ukrainian prisoners in Russia, I mean Sentsov list prisoners. And there was a resolution that mentioned all the Ukrainian citizens who are the Kremlin's prisoners. And the Ukrainian parliament of new convocation was not able to do it. So during the next summit, we hope that there will be Ukrainian issue that will be discussed, and the issue of Sentsov list and the release of the prisoners. Before, this list contained the names of 11 people, and today it has 135 names. So there should be reinforcement of sanctions. Unfortunately, Russia prepares new provocations, escalation, and also exercises Caucasus 2020. And we will speak with experts about this topic. I would like to thank all our speakers, European parliamentarians. I would like to thank UCMC for English translation of this discussion, because many European deputies and their assistants, they wanted to hear what Ukrainians are discussing on the eve of the summit. And I believe that we had quality discussion without much politicization. So I believe that this was useful. And we hope that we will get official answer concerning the agenda. And we hope that after summit, maybe we will have European integration laws that will be passed through the parliament. Thank you very much. Until